Welcome, everyone. Call the meeting to order. We'll start with introductions. I'll start with the voting members and I'll call you out by name. Erica?
Thanks, Dale. Erica Goodman, voting member.
Dave? You muted, Dave? Can't hear you. Yeah, I think you're muted.
Okay.
There you are.
Yeah, I was noted. Dave Brad, Vice Chair, voting member.
Scott?
Yeah, Ryan, NYZD representative, voting member.
I'm Dale Stein, Chair. Turn it over to you, Brian.
Okay, I will start with advisory members. Ag and Markets, who's on from Ag and Markets?
Morning, Brian. Tim here.
Hi, Tim. CDEA, Employees Association.
Hello, Brian. Dustin Lewis here.
Hello, Dustin.
Good morning.
DEC, good morning. Who's here from DEC?
Sarah Latessa.
Morning, Sarah. Anyone else from DEC? Okay, Department of Health.
Paul Kaczmarczyk.
Morgan Tarbell.
Good morning, Paul. Good morning, Morgan. Department of State.
Good morning. This is Stephanie from Department of State, and Kate will be joining us a little bit later. We're in a tag team, so she's going to join, and I'm going to have to jump off. So we're here.
Okay, Stephanie. Got it. Thank you, Stephanie. Welcome. Cornell Cowles.
Good morning, Brian. This is Brian Rum from the New York State Water Resources Institute at Cornell.
Good morning, Brian. Thank you for joining. Cornell Cooperative Extension. USDA NRCS.
Good morning, Brian. Blake Glover, State Conservationist, along with Paula Bagley, State Conservation Engineer.
Good morning, Blake. Good morning, Paula. SUNY ESF.
Hi, Brian. This is Steve Shaw.
Good morning, Steve. Okay, we'll quickly go through staff as well. Victor? Is Victor on?
Good morning. Victor's here.
Okay. PJ Emmerich. I believe Ryan is in the field doing closeouts today in Eastern New York, so I don't believe Ryan is on. Scott Fickbaum.
Good morning, everyone. I'm here.
Hi, Scott. Brendan Jordan.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Brendan Jordan, CNMP Specialist.
Good morning, Brendan. Ron Bush.
Good morning, CNMP Specialist with the state.
Good morning, Ron. Craig Albrecht.
Good morning, everybody. Craig Albrecht, CNMP Specialist and AIM-based Coordinator.
Good morning, Greg. Ben Luskin.
Good morning, Ben Luskin, Region 5 AEA.
Good morning, Ben. All right. Tim Clark.
Yep, good morning. I'm the engineer for the state committee.
Good morning. Lauren Prozorski.
Good morning. I'm the EBM program manager for the state committee.
Okay. Am I missing any staff from the phone? Okay. Here in the office, we have. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hey, Brian. Sorry, this is Brian Ellis, New York State DEC. Sorry, I missed the DEC slot earlier.
I'm here too.
No
Molly
worries, Brian.
has
Thank
it.
you so much.
Yeah, I asked her that, you know.
Okay, Brian Molly, welcome. Thank you.
But only because it's pretty far away.
Okay, here in the office, we have, we'll start with Jennifer.
Jennifer Clifford, CRF Program Manager.
Bethany?
Bethany Bizdu, Ag Non-Point Source Program Manager.
Brian Steinmiller, Assistant Director for the State Committee, and I'd like to welcome Abigail Edwards to our team. Abigail joins us as an Excelsior Fellow who will be working on climate issues, assisting with all of our programs, working on state committee affairs, and so great to have you, Abigail. Would you like to introduce yourself a little bit more?
Sure. I'm originally from California, so I'm a long way from home. I'm from a farming background. I've been farming and selling market vegetables since I was 5 years old in a small town in Northern California. I went to UC Davis to study sustainable ag and food systems with an emphasis in soil biogeochemistry. And while I was there, I was the CSA coordinator for our local student farm. And then I post-graduation, dabbled in some international agricultural development, and ended up getting my master's at Columbia, and I ended up here, and I'm really excited to learn more about the really interesting and amazing work you're all doing, and hopefully do some good work, and I'm just really excited to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, and a big welcome to all of our conservation districts on the line today, partners as well. We don't have an opportunity, won't have time to go through the entire list of participants, but again, if you are calling in and we don't have your name on the screen, please just drop me a quick email to let me know who you are, first name, last name, and affiliation, so we can record you for the minutes. Thank you. Dale, back to you.
Thanks, Brian. Welcome, everyone. Review and approve minutes. Are there any additions and corrections? Can I get a motion to approve?
So move.
Second?
Second.
Moved and approved. We'll go to voting. Erica?
Approved.
Dave?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Approved. Thank you. Correspondence, Brian?
So I had it on the agenda, but don't actually have any official correspondence to review today. So I think we'll actually have we're gaining some time. So I think we can go right to the next part of the agenda. Dale, if you don't mind, I can introduce Molly and Brian to the group as well.
Please do.
Okay. We are delighted to have Molly Hassett and Brian Ellis from the New York State DEC's Division of Lands and Forests. Going to be talking to us today more specifically about the forestry-related recommendations in our Ag and Forestry Advisory Panel and what will become the scoping plan for New York State's Climate Action Council and Climate Leadership Community Protection Act. Dale, thank you very much for suggesting and asking that DEC come to talk to us about this aspect of our work. Certainly there is a lot of potential interaction with and cross-pollination with the conservation programs that we administer here through the State Committee and districts expertly implement across New York State. So we're delighted to have both Molly and Brian to talk more specifically about the forestry-related recommendations and really start a dialogue about how conservation districts and our conservation partnership can help impact implementation of these recommendations. So with that, I will turn it over to Molly and Brian.
Sure. Thanks, Brian. I appreciate the introduction there. We have a brief presentation we'll try to share here, if that's all right.
Absolutely, please.
All right. Okay. All right. And let's see. So Molly and I wanted to come talk to all of you today at obviously Brian's request here about the recommendations for the CLCPA, the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act as they relate to forestry. And, you know, I appreciate everyone taking the time to talk about this today. We see at DEC anyways, the soil and water conservation districts as being a really important part of this as we roll it out. And we can get more into it, but, you know, understanding what's going on the ground out in New York is really important, and having a lot of our recommendations are relating to really specific environmental factors on the ground that, people like me in Albany can look at behind a desk or on a computer and talk broad scale, but really having a good understanding of the actual on the ground conditions is something that is invaluable in a lot of these locations. And just as part of it, one of the things that examples I always think about in forestry, specifically with this, is the large-scale planting efforts that were done by the CCC at the turn of the century, and how a lot of the plantations that were planted these days, we're dealing with the improper siting of those today. Red pine plantations that are failing because they're put on the wrong sites. And, I think, in order as we move forward with these recommendations and the actions that we're going to take to try to mitigate climate change in New York specifically, that we're going to need to be really careful to site trees at the right locations in the right places and take actions that really make sense out on the landscape. And having a group of people engaged like all of you is going to be really important to making that successful in the long term, and not just getting trees in the ground. So that being said, our presentation today, we wanted to talk a little bit about New York's forest stats and trends update, just try to give a little background on what's going on in New York's forest across New York. Then we're going to talk about the CLCPA forestry recommendations. And we've broken them into 5 main categories. The first category is keeping forests as forests, so that's avoiding conversion. And that's a really important part, so we can maintain the forest cover that we have in New York. And then there's improved forest management, afforestation and reforestation, so planting trees, urban forestry, and so what's going on in our urban centers, and how much forest cover we have in those areas. And then, of course, bioeconomy, kind of from a different angle, but is also a really important part of it. And, a few things that we're going to talk about today, and, please feel free to jump in, raise your hand, ask any questions. I talk about this a lot. I'm going to try to avoid using acronyms too much. Obviously, I've thrown in CLCPA here and things like that, but I'll try to avoid that as much as possible, because those things tend to slip into my language, and not everyone is as familiar with them as I am. So a few things that we'll talk about today is carbon storage, so the amount of carbon that's stored in our forests. And that's different than carbon sequestration, which would be the amount of carbon that's sequestered by our trees, at some sort of time increment. So like each year is typically how we look at it from the CLCPA. And then, at least for this New York forest stats and trends, a lot of the data that we're going to talk about is from the Forest Inventory Analysis Program, which is done by the Forest Service. And that's done on, an annual, but we get 5-year reports on that. And those are done through plots and throughout New York. And that's had been done in the United States, and it's been done for a really long time. So just to do a little background here on the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, the CLCPA established the Climate Action Council. And their goal is to develop a scoping plan that will, set out to reduce or to have 70% of our energy from renewable sources by 2030, 100% zero emission from electricity by 2040, an 85% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions from the 1990 levels by 2050, and a goal of net zero emissions by 2050. And where forestry really fits into this is when you get that 85% reduction in greenhouse gas from 1990, the rest of that 15% can be taken up through carbon sequestration, so kind of like negative emissions. And so, the forests in New York play a really important role in meeting our goals for this law. And, we're really been digging down with folks in Ag and Markets and our Ag and Forestry panel on looking at, how we can meet some of these goals by 2050. And I think they're really challenging, especially when we think about the time frame in which things change on a forest landscape. Is that this is not something that can happen overnight. Trees don't grow in one day or within a year, and really hitting the ground running here is going to be really important. So New York's forests. There's about 18.6 million acres of forest in New York, which covers about 62% of the land area in New York. It's about 59% of the total area, but that's including some water area in New York. And again, we got this information from the Forest Inventory Analysis, and they've been tracking forest cover in New York for a really long time. And when fitting this into the larger picture of what's been going on in New York forests and looking at the trends of New York forests, we have a graph here on the right. And since, for the last 15 years or so, forest area in New York has remained relatively steady. But it's important to understand that New York forest area in New York hit its low in the early 1900s and has been regrowing ever since. So we've had a pretty drastic increase. I think forest area in New York was about 20% in the early 1900s. And it's been regrowing ever since. So it kind of hit its peak in 2012. And since 2012, we've actually seen a decrease in forest area in New York. So just 1%, so it's a slight decrease, but it's, a concerning trend when thinking about forest cover, carbon sequestration benefits that these forests provide, and then also thinking of the temporal scale of the CLCPA and looking at those 1990 levels. So understanding that. And so when trying to understand where this forest loss is coming from, it's really important to try to think about, where we're losing forests and to what uses. And, I would say some are worse than others. 49% of forest area that was lost since 2012 was from agriculture. And if you look back at New York stats and trends, this is, a trend that we see quite a bit in that you'll lose some forest area to agriculture, but you also gain just about an equal amount back from agriculture. And that kind of reflects this trend of, some fields or agricultural areas kind of going in and out of between forest and agriculture use. And so this working landscape in New York, has been present for a really long time. And that's something that we see and we have seen in the past. So that's not something that we're too concerned about. And in terms of forest cover, I think the more concerning trend would be like 33% of that forest area was lost to development. And that is, a much more permanent change in the forest cover. Typically, you lose a lot more carbon is released when we have that kind of land use change because of the disturbance in the soils and things like that. And so that's definitely more concerning and something that we definitely looked at through our CLCPA recommendations and are hoping to combat that trend. And then now when thinking about our 18.6 million acres of forest in New York, it's really important to understand, who owns what land and, how we can affect forest management and carbon sequestration across the landscape. And so the pie chart to the right here is showing, the breakdown of forest area in New York. And as you can see, about 73% of that forest area is owned by private owners. So that's the vast majority of the land, while only 25% is owned by your state and local, and very small percentage is owned by federal. And so, that state and local ownership are your state forests statewide. There are Adirondack and Catskill parks, and our state parks. And so there's a wide range of areas that are owned by New York State. We can facilitate management on some of those areas, but in areas like the Adirondacks and the Catskills, those areas are forever wild. And so they're kind of going to be left there to grow and store carbon at the rate that they're going to, as long as we don't have, natural disturbance or invasive species affecting those areas. And so that's, a great carbon store and a carbon sink in New York. But when thinking about the, vast majority of area that we could affect, private forest land is really the area that we could have the largest impact on. And so, about 10 million acres are owned by what we consider family forest owners. And that we get that information both from FIA and another Forest Service output called the National Woodland Owner Survey, which is also done every 5 years, surveys landowners across the country to ask them, about their forest land, about how they manage it, and, things that they care about, so that we could really get a better understanding of who these people are who own the majority of forests in the United States and New York specifically, so that we can really better understand what they care about and how to help them better manage their forests to protect New York forests. And so 87% of that land is owned by people who own from 10 to 99 acres, so pretty small amount of acreage in the grand scheme of things. And so that's a lot of people own small acreages, and it's going to, be a real challenge to reach all those people. They all care about different things. They're, different things are motivating them, and they own land for a lot of different reasons. And, that leads me to kind of the top 3 reasons that these landowners own their land. And, when surveyed, timber and forest management never even reach the top 5 typically. The top 3 here are aesthetics, privacy, and wildlife. And that's why people own their land. And so, trying to reach people from a forest management perspective can sometimes be difficult. So that's just, kind of laying some context for why this is going to be, a pretty big lift and a challenge for us when trying to reach these landowners. Additionally from this survey, what they found is that only 27% of acres owned by family forest owners have received management advice in the last 5 years. So either people are out there managing on their own without getting professional advice from groups like the Soil and Water Conservation Districts, from us and DEC Lands and Forests, from groups like that, or they're not managing at all, which, has some positives and some negatives. So, New York in general has had, a long history of management. We have a lot of secondary forests in New York. And so it's really important to understand, as we thought about the changes in the forest area in New York, to understand, the changes in our forests in New York. And so the graph to the right kind of shows a breakdown of what New York forests look like in New York and where they've been trending. And one of the things that you can see here from this graph, just to break it down, is that the area in brown is increasing, the area in green is decreasing. So we're seeing, less and less of those smaller age classes, so those like seedlings and saplings, small trees regenerating in New York, and the larger diameter age classes becoming more prevalent in New York. And so that's, makes a lot of sense when we've talked about the trends in New York forests. So, we have an aging forest, which isn't a bad thing. I think we had really young forests for a long time. And as they age, then, our forests get bigger. In terms of climate, that's a really important thing to think about, because young forests sequester carbon much faster than an older forest does, but your older forests store a lot more carbon. And so, when trying to think about the rate of New York State sequestration in our forests, we're coming up to a couple challenges. One is, loss of forest area, and the other one is loss of productivity on our forests. And so those are a couple things that these recommendations are going to definitely be looking at, trying to reverse those trends. Not just cut our forests down, but try to increase the productivity that's out there. Some technical things here is 43% of New York forests are moderately or poorly stocked, and If you're not used to forestry terms, stocking is kind of like the available space in a forest. How well is it being utilized? And so, is our trees taking up all of the space that they could be in a forest, or is that forest not have enough trees to take up the available growing space? In addition to that, we've seen an increase in what we call cull or unacceptable growing stock. So those are trees that will never grow to be a valuable forest product, like a board that people could sell. It might be something that could go to a low-grade market, but it's not something that could ever be cut into to timber. And so, seeing an increase in those makes us think about some of the trends that we've been in the forestry world, at least, seeing in our forests, and that's the prevalence of really poor management out on the landscape, high grading specifically, is an epidemic in New York. We see a lot of it. And then when thinking about the decrease in those seedling and sapling classes, we think about regeneration issues that we're having in New York, and those are really well documented. A lot of New York is really struggling with regeneration, specifically because of an overabundance of deer. And so, those things are definitely challenges to New York's forests, and something that, in terms of carbon and climate change, that we're really working uphill in terms of carbon sequestration. So just like to kind of a brief overview of the carbon cycle as it relates to forests. So, as I mentioned earlier, young forests are sequestering our carbon faster. Mature forests are storing a lot of carbon. And so, as they store carbon, those trees grow. Then there's going to be a release of carbon, either through trees dying from natural disturbances like fire, storm events, knocking trees down. That decomposition is going to release some carbon. Obviously, land use change is going to do it, and forest management can release some carbon into the atmosphere. But through forest management, some of those products can go to be durable wood products. Building homes, building big buildings, as we'll talk about later, some of the innovative building practices that are out there. And so when something goes to a durable wood product, then that carbon is stored long term. And when more trees grow and take up the carbon that was released, we've stored more carbon. It's a closed cycle is kind of how we like to look at it. Opposed to, when fossil fuels are used to create power, those fossil fuels, it's an open system and just release directly into the atmosphere. All right. So, as I kind of mentioned earlier, we have 5 main areas for our recommendations: keeping forests as forests, improve forest management, afforestation, urban forestry, and bioeconomy. And the graph on the left here kind of shows where sequestration levels are at right now. Obviously, 2030 and 2050 are modeled, and so we're hoping to, we've seen from 1990 negative emissions around 30 million metric tons. And we've seen a little bit of a decrease in that to 2018. And we're hoping to reverse that trend by 2030. And then, as you can see by that 2050 number, we've got, a long way to go and a lot of work to do to get to that number. And so that's kind of the challenge ahead of us when looking at these recommendations. And so I'm going to quickly go over, start here with our keeping forests as forests, and then I'm going to hand this off to Molly to kind of talk about the other recommendations that we have. So for land acquisition, obviously, if you want to keep forests as forests, conserving land and preventing it from being converted is, an important part of it. New York State DEC, New York State in general, has, done a really good job of acquiring land. The Adirondack parks, the conservation easements that are up there are all part of that equation. But, looking at areas in the state that are under more intense pressure for development are going to be important as well, because after those areas are parcelized and lost, it's harder to get those areas back. And so, the state acquisition program is going to be important, but also working with local partners to, conserve land in their area that's important to them is going to be also an important part. And protecting some of those forests and really critical resources. Sometimes I talk about forests in general, and I can focus on the carbon sequestration and the carbon storage side of things, just because, that's what we talk a lot about with climate change. But, you also have to think about all the other benefits that forests provide. And, are they riparian buffers, preventing flooding? They're providing clean water, wildlife habitat, things like that. Forests in important areas provide a lot of benefits to the people of New York beyond carbon sequestration and carbon storage. The next area that we were talking about for preventing conversion and keeping forests as forests is real property tax incentives. And I don't know how many people on this call have had experience with our current 480A program in New York, but we call it our current use program. Most states in the East Coast have a current use program to kind of give people a tax break for having forests. And New York's program, the 480A program, has a timber production lean to it. So everyone has to create forest products in a certain time frame. It's an older law. It has some issues administratively, sustainability-wise. It does, and as well as it doesn't have the climate perspective not really built into it. But it does give folks an 80% tax break on their forest land, on the assessed value of their forest land on their property. And so, when I was working directly in that program in the Catskills, a lot of people, got into the program not because they were interested in timber management, but because, the taxes were really crushing them and they needed, an incentive. And, the benefit of the program is that it, helps people keep parcels together without breaking them apart and selling them and parcelizing them. It does connect them with a professional forester to create a management plan. And so that helps facilitate better management. And I think the Watershed Ag Council did a study about 10 years ago in the Catskill region and found that, overall, much better management was happening on 480A properties than was happening elsewhere in the state. And so that, is really a benefit to the program and something that as we look to, protect forest area and keep it intact and improve the management on that area to make them more productive and resilient to climate change and invasive species, that's going to be a really important part. And so, as the panel was working on this, one of the things that they thought about was creating some new paths that people could get into. Obviously, amending the 480A program to maybe allow some non-forested areas into it to protect, open space. Reducing penalties. The penalties on 480A are archaic and very large. It's, what is it now? 2.5 times or 5 times the assessed value that you saved, with compounding interest over the number of years. So, people can very quickly, try to get 10 acres out of 480A and get charged $60,000, $80,000, $100,000 on those. And so, changing those penalties and giving some leeway depending on the situation, I think is really important. For some of the new programs, they look at lowering that acre threshold. 480A has a 50-acre threshold. And, as we think back to some of the stats I was showing earlier about family forest owners, there's a lot of family forest owners out there who own, less than 50 acres of land. And so finding a way to reach those folks, help them keep their forests as forests and get them in touch with professional management is going to be important. And so that's what some of these other programs, 480B, and then 480C would be similar, but would have, maybe a more carbon bent to it. So, they'd be tasked with really increasing carbon stores on their property. And they might get a higher benefit for that, but they would, be required to do a little bit more for that. So, these are the kind of some of the programs that we thought about that are going to hit, the keeping as forest, but they'll also, hit improved forest management as well. So they'll kind of do a variety of things. And then, one of the big ones that we thought about here is to regulate forest conversion. And, there are wetland laws out there that protect wetlands because of the benefit that wetlands provide the people of New York. And so looking at a similar law for protecting the loss of carbon and the forests, because forests provide a lot of benefits to people in New York. And so, as those have been, as the wetland laws kind of designed, it would look to avoid any impact on forests and then minimize it in every way possible. And then when that's not possible, to mitigate that forest loss. One thing that we've really thought about, and when I talked about land use conversion earlier in my presentation, is that conversion to agriculture, and how there's a good bit of land that kind of moves back and forth between those two land uses. And so I think it's really important when thinking about forest land conversion and having a exemption for agriculture in there, just because that's a working landscape that kind of transitions between agriculture and forestry on a pretty wide scale across New York. And then I think this is the last one we have, is participate in carbon markets. And that would facilitate investment in New York State forests and development there. So that's something that would take quite a bit to get put in. But obviously, we have voluntary offsets that people are able to take a part of. If we had regulatory offset requirement, that would also have put a lot of investment into New York forests. All right, and I will pass this off to Molly, and we're going to do like a seat shuffle here. So.
Well, while you're doing that, Brian, Molly, would you like to answer questions that pertain to certain parts of this presentation, or would you like to wait till the end?
Either is fine. If people have some questions now, I'd be glad to answer them, or we can wait till the end. It doesn't matter.
Well, this one is related to the 488 tax law and other versions of that, specifically in regards to the protection of the tax base and impacts to smaller communities. I know that was a part of our discussions within the panel, but is consideration being given to aiding these communities with this and helping the communities with that offset of tax revenue?
Yeah, and that can be really significant, Brian, in a lot of communities. I heard it when I was working in the Catskills with 480A, and I think it can be even more significant in the Adirondacks that have a smaller land base, and that's something that we have talked about a lot, and I know have been written into at least our proposals with those is having a reimbursement to communities for that lost tax revenue.
Thank you. That's all the questions so far.
Okay, maybe I'll get started then. So, hi everyone. I'm Molly Hassett. I know it says speaking Molly Hassett, but you're looking at Brian on that screen. So hopefully that's not all too confusing. We've got quite the setup here. But here we go, getting started. So I'm going to cover the last three parts of the scoping plan, starting with improved forest management. I'm going to cover them kind of broadly. So I think we dove pretty deep in for the 480A program and some of the specifics there, because we had an idea, or they had an idea at the panel setting it up, what specifically they wanted to do there, but some of these other mechanisms are kind of broad at this point, so this part might move a little bit quicker. We'll see. So one of the things that came up in the strategies and the recommendations is forest health, so protecting our forests from forest pathogens and insects and other invasive species. So all of those reduce the productivity of the forest and increase tree mortality. On the slide there, I've got the spotted lanternfly, which suck some of the juices from the trees and can really reduce the productivity of the forest. And emerald ash borer, which is another really popular one, which has been really devastating ash trees across the state for the past 10 or more years. So the strategy or recommendation there was looking at the need to increase the capacity for prevention and rapid response, as well as mitigation of all of these insects, diseases, and invasive species, trying to increase that forest health. The next part of improved forest management is really improving the silviculture and restoration aspects of forest management. So one of the main things that we'd like to push is reducing and eliminating high grading. So high grading is when all the really big, nice, tall trees in the forest are cut down and all the scraggly little trees are left. So that really leaves the forest not in a good spot. The tree genetics, as the forest continues to grow and try to reproduce and keep going, is really poor. So the forest over time doesn't absorb as much carbon and is generally like in poor health and doesn't grow as big and nice. So really eliminating and reducing high grading is really important. And outreach to landowners on all the best management practices for forests and forest management is going to be key, since, as we saw with Brian's presentation, 75% of the forests in New York are owned by private landowners. So helping them figure out what those best management practices are, as well as who to contact for their forestry work, is going to be really useful in helping the health of the forest and just general carbon benefits, help the forest keep growing. Yeah. And another strategy was to introduce some more carbon training for foresters. So that would be all of increasing carbon storage, teaching foresters how to look for good forests for carbon sequestration and keeping carbon sucked out of the atmosphere, as well as improving the resilience and adaptation of forest capacity, because forests are going to continue to be hit by climate change as well. There will be more flooding, probably more storms, longer periods of drought, which are all going to have a negative impact on the trees. So trying to figure out and help foresters better adapt and think about climate as well as carbon will be really useful as we keep going along here. And Brian talked a little bit about regeneration, but I have on the slide here a map of predicted forest regeneration status of all tree species in New York. And all of the red, orange, and yellow areas, which really is most of the state, has poor or insecure regeneration. So that's all areas that have opportunities for improved regeneration improvement. We can get more trees to grow in these areas, hopefully, with improved silviculture and research, as well as working on some of the issues that are stopping that regeneration. Just deer overpopulation, overbrowsing, and competing vegetation. So we've got the Regenerate New York program in New York right now, which is starting to gear towards landowners. It's a cost share program to help pay for deer fencing, as well as competing vegetation, some of those barriers to help forest landowners now. And we'd like to continue that program, but increase other incentives as well. The next topic is afforestation and reforestation. So afforestation is planting trees in areas that haven't been forested for a while, maybe 15 or 20 years. And reforestation is planting trees and getting natural regeneration in areas that have been forested more recently than that. So afforestation, the Nature Conservancy has predicted that there's up to 4 million acres available in New York for afforestation efforts. But at our current capacity and even maybe future capacity, our optimistic goal is to plant about 4,000 acres or 400,000 acres by 2040, which would be about 15 to 20 million seedlings a year planted. So I believe the CCC back in the 1930s did about 300,000 acres in about 10 years. So our optimistic goal would be to do a little bit more in a little bit more time. So we'll see how it goes. Hopefully we can get lots of areas planted. And on the right, there's a picture of a lady planting trees next to a riparian, a stream side area. And that will be really important. A lot of planting trees and forests in general have a lot of other benefits for wildlife, habitat corridors, and preventing siltation and runoff from other areas that are nearby those forests and streams. So planting trees is going to be really important. So reforestation, one of the areas that we'll probably end up trying to target is some of those understocked hardwood forests. So hardwood forests that for one reason or another don't have trees growing very well inside the space that they have. Just trying to get more trees inside the space that's available to try to improve that carbon sequestration, carbon storage in all those forests. So the next topic that is kind of mixed throughout all of these is urban forestry. And I'd say one of the main points of urban forestry that's being worked on now and that we'll probably continue to try to build capacity for is increasing tree canopy and planting and maintenance inside urban areas. So urban areas where the trees grow really helps shade populations, and that shade helps offset energy costs. So if you have trees around your house, it probably is reducing your energy bill, which is reducing, the reliance overall on fossil fuels and other energy. So that's really important for carbon. Even though, there's fewer trees for every acre of urban area, however many trees are there, they are doing really good things for carbon benefits, even if they themselves aren't sucking down as much carbon as, I guess, a natural forest would. So some of the ways that are targeted inside the recommendations and scoping plan will be grant programs for planting trees in urban areas, training and recruiting more tree care professionals, and trying to get a youth tree corps started, which would really target a lot of the maintenance inside the urban areas as well as planting inside urban areas, and also give young people some more background and professional training inside forestry and urban forestry. And the last general topic we have is bioeconomy. A lot of the recommendations that I have here are focused on durable wood products, so like wood that's used for housing or furniture, and that's where we'll start. So for bioeconomy, one of the main goals is increase durable harvested wood products, and that includes mass timber and cross-laminated timber, and wood furnishing. So cross-laminated timber is actually kind of a part of mass timber. But wood products overall, they store carbon. They still have the carbon from the tree, but they also reduce the amount of carbon dioxide emissions and other greenhouse gas emissions that are used if they are substituting for concrete or steel or other fossil fuel-based products. So that one image that I have is the global warming potential of alternative floor materials. So using lumber is those two green pieces of the chart. And so using lumber for flooring reduces greenhouse gas potential by about 450% compared to concrete. So this is probably in some of the big office buildings like Brian and I are in that, use concrete for each of the flooring. And using lumber would reduce the greenhouse gas potential by about 730% compared to using steel for flooring. So overall, using lumber and wood not only stores some of the carbon from the forests, but also can help reduce the emissions that would otherwise be produced by other products like concrete and steel. And expanding markets for wood products is another really important strategy that we have in there. And this includes building code changes to encourage the use of mass timber for taller buildings. And I have an image of one of the buildings being used for mass timber. It's pretty open floor plan. It's It looks nice to me, anyhow. And in this last very small section of this presentation, some of these strategies tie in a bit to the agriculture section, and one of those is increasing the market access for New York low carbon products. And this last section here, working on a biomass feedstock action plan is also very important and also very tied to the agricultural scoping plan and strategies. So creating an action plan that looks at products that are hard to decarbonize and trying to figure out how to reduce greenhouse gases for those is ongoing and hopefully will be ongoing, and more research is needed into that. I think that's everything for all of our slides. So here's our contact information too, if you guys ever have any questions. And are there any questions now?
This is Dale Stein. In the 30s, or when they were doing all the reforestation, they did primarily pine trees. Are you looking more at hardwoods now instead of pine trees?
I think we haven't drilled down to the specific species, I would say, that we're looking at. I would, when thinking about that question, pine trees tend to sequester carbon at a faster rate than hardwoods would, and sometimes are a little more difficult to get established. But when looking at, hardwoods are a little more difficult to get established. But when thinking about climate resiliency and having the correct forests in those areas, hardwoods tend to be, what we might want to lean towards in some. So I think, proper siting of those trees is going to be really important. And, if pine is the right species for that site, it's maybe a sandy site, then, that we should probably put pine there. But if it's not the right species, then we shouldn't try to force it into that location. We've definitely been, in terms of state land, dealing with the consequences of those decisions for a long time in our failing plantations across the state.
Second question would be, how do you plan to address invasive species with the hardwoods?
Yeah, I know inside the strategies, there were some, I think, SMART goals that were targeting prevention of invasive species and really trying to get more inspections, potentially, of things that are coming into New York, wood products and other things that could be harboring invasive species.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think from our experience in New York and with some of the invasive species that we've dealt with, if an invasive species takes hold and really gets going, like we've seen emerald ash borer do, then there's really no stopping it, and no amount of resources that the state could throw at that problem would be able to stop it. Unfortunately, for things like EAB, by the time it got to New York, it was already at an unstoppable pace. So, early detection is something that, I know our forest health group, an invasive species group in DEC, and we work really closely with ag and markets as well, is really focuses on. I know ag and markets has a lot of inspectors out there at places like nurseries and things like that to kind of look for those new introductions of species. And so that's something that is going to be even more critical. But, on other fronts, combating those invasive species where we can is also going to be a really important part of that. So it's not just only prevention, but, DEC has been doing things like, treating outlier populations of hemlock woolly adelgid towards the Adirondacks, which has, some of the largest carbon stores of any tree species in New York, in the Adirondacks. And so, finding those outlier populations and combating those on forest preserve land is something we've been doing in the last few years, and something that we're going to need to continue doing and maybe expand to kind of protect those carbon resources when thinking about this from a climate standpoint.
Thank you. Anyone else? Questions?
Brian, this is Jennifer with Ag Markets. Can you speak about the deer browse a little bit, the issue and what the obstacles and the recommendations are for that?
Yeah, I don't think that, well, Molly can correct me because she probably knows it better than me. I don't know if we had anything on combating deer population statewide, but generally in the forestry world, we have seen that there, there are so many deer in New York and the populations are so high that it's preventing tree regeneration in a lot of locations. Some things that we have done is for Regenerate New York, one of the practices, our planting practices and regeneration practices, we're allowing to pay for fencing to keep deer out of those locations. I know that, Cornell has also been working on some ideas like building slash walls when they do timber harvests around areas to try to prevent deer getting into those areas for, a couple of years until that regeneration can become established. So those are a few things, obviously, as a forester, I would, want, probably a reduction in deer populations statewide, but, I think, there's a lot that goes into that, and, a lot of different groups that would look into that. So, that's something that, is very area specific and not my expertise at all. So, but, I think when thinking about some of the practices in terms of regeneration and planting, we're going to have to think about, protecting those areas from deer until they get above deer browse. And that's going to mean more expensive plantings generally in New York because we're going to have to continually protect them from deer until they get above browse.
Brian, this is Brian, and I have a question in regards to the certified carbon forester concept.
Sure.
And yeah, I think I might know the answer to this question, but for the group, what are some of the key concepts to that? And do we have a model that could be drawn from for that certification, or maybe does that certification exist somewhere already that we can borrow from?
No, I'm not positive if it exists somewhere already. I'm sure that there are resources out there that we can use to kind of design that. Right now at DEC, we have a cooperating forester program. And so that is a list of people who have, some forestry qualifications that, if a public calls us and asks us for a forester, we can recommend them to it. We don't have a licensing of foresters in New York. So, the cooperating forester program is kind of how we do that. I think that, we'd have to, I think we'd have to talk within DEC about what would be important for folks to learn in terms of carbon forestry. So yeah, Brian, I honestly don't have a great answer for you there. I think we'd have to do a little research, and I haven't dug into that too much.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I just I know in some of our initial discussions that we had in regards to that, there was some maybe connective tissue between district services and district foresters, and the need to actually provide those services toward that higher level of carbon sequestration. So I guess that was a roundabout way I was asking a question, but also trying to make a point that that's something that we should be further discussing and drawing from our expertise in our technical services, whether it's through AEM planning or more and more districts that are putting on foresters and providing services to smaller landowners with smaller forests, I should say. So just something to keep note of.
No, Brian, that makes a lot of sense. And I think, one of the things that obviously you guys have all thought about when working on the forestry panel is, kind of having everyone come with a similar skill set. So we're all kind of looking at the problem similarly and trying to address those issues. So, kind of education statewide is going to be important for that.
Great.
I think as we start a reforestation program, I guess if that's what you want to call it, for all the open space that's been left, especially in Eastern New York, you see a lot of goldenrod fields. How do you survivability of seedlings, from my experience, is difficult without intensive management until you get them 3 years old or so. And to plant the number of acres, I do believe you'll need, many people will need some type of professional help to be able to keep up those alive to accomplish the end goal.
Yeah, Dale, I think that's really important. Another thing that, I was literally just talking with Jason Drobnik, who runs our Regenerate New York program right now. And, they were seeing really expensive costs for planting. And one of the things that is really leading to those expensive costs, one was deer fencing, but the other was continuous support for a few years on those plantings. So, watering in year 2 is a pretty expensive thing to do, as well as, maintenance around those trees and things like that. So, that's something that program is paying for right now. And I think that we're going to have to look at that model statewide, and that's probably going to lead to pretty expensive plantings per acre when we were looking at it. So you can't just plant them and leave them, unfortunately.
I found that if you plant transplants, the survivability is 2-year-old transplants is way higher than seedlings. They're just better adapted to be able to survive the first year.
Oh, yeah.
Anyone else? Any other questions? All right, thank you very much, Molly and Brian. I believe we have a large program that is going to be forthcoming on reforesting New York and getting it going. So we look forward to working with you.
Thanks, Dale. I do see a couple questions in the chat. I just wanted to, Lindsay, you mentioned lumber markets. Sorry, just to try to touch on that, is that while lumber markets have been really expensive across the country, we have seen a really robust timber industry in New York, and prices of wood is really high. So people are getting a great price for their wood out there right now. It's one of the challenges that we've had with Regenerate New York is that our foresters out there are prioritizing doing timber sales because they're really cutting a lot out there right now because the markets are so good. So it's funny that these global markets will have issues, but locally in New York, we aren't seeing those problems. Again, when talking about a global market, I don't think there's a lot that we can do in New York to address, those kind of global prices on timber. And also in New York, a lot of our wood products are hardwood products, and we're not making a lot of dimensional lumber for construction of buildings and things like that. So. So that's just, kind of one of the specifics of the trees that we grow in New York.
I guess, Brian, in what I was thinking in my statement and my question is New York has really based itself around grown and certified and really trying to evolve ourselves into local purchasing, thus to reduce carbon footprint by trucking and transport and all shipping and all these other things. But yet, while timber sales in the market are really high, it's taking our resources locally out of the area and also around the country. And I was just kind of wondering, if we're encouraging our local contractors and our local businesses, has any discussion had with legislation about putting an incentive-based program together to allow a tax reduction on a project or capital improvement to the contractors if they use local products, even if it is a little bit more costly? I know it's all capital market things, but I think we need when we look at projects like this and starting programs, we need to look at all aspects and perspectives and long-term impact. And I think that's one thing that I'm struggling with on other programs right now, is it focuses on a really specific goal, but didn't give consideration to the way it impacts other things. So I just wanted to put that out there as something for consideration and discussion to continue on.
Lindsay, I think that's really an interesting thing to think about. And yeah, that could be a really beneficial program, especially, if the products that we're incentivizing are built in New York. Some products aren't built in New York, unfortunately. I know we've worked on getting, Norway spruce, for example, to be a species that can be used and stamped for dimensional lumber building materials. And so that's a species that we have a lot of in New York. And so then that, allows our local mills to be able to mill it and it be used locally, where, other times, people might not even be able to source something from New York because we just don't have the correct species for that. But yeah, it's definitely something that we should be working on as well. All right.
Thank you both, and we can. I've noted the next question in the chat as well, and we can try to address that offline. But just for the sake of time, I also want to thank Brian and Molly for a very informative presentation, and just let you both know that you have a standing invitation to attend state committee meetings into the future and be part of the discussions. And we look forward to further engagement on these topics.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it. Thanks for having us here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. We move on to the CRF with Jennifer and Brian.
Yeah, so
We're unmuted, yep.
this is Jennifer Clifford. I received the Climate Resilient Farming Program. I'm going to give a quick program update for round 5. That's the last round we just awarded. We have 44 contracts in that round, and all have been executed except for 8. So we're that round is chugging along to moving along. All the projects are the ones that have been executed are starting, so that's great news. For rounds 1 through 4, we have about 16 projects that are going to be nearing their close dates for in 2021. So we will have some more extensions and or some closeouts for those. That covers that's basically rounds 1, 2, and 3 are starting to come to a close now. So that's kind of a quick status update of projects. For round 6, I am working on RFP updates and some changes that we'll be discussing with the TAC in October. And then we will be, I'll bring those changes in an RFP to be approved by the state committee shortly after that. Let's see, this meeting, I have 2 amendments for the committee to consider. Both from round 3. The first one is from Schoharie County, Soil and Water District. It's a round 3 project where they are requesting to extend to 12/31/2022. The farm has changed management of animals, requiring a redesign of the original plan to cross a stream with steep side slopes. So they've had to redesign, as well as had some weather issues that have prevented construction. The contractor has been secured, so they are committed to completing within the new time frame.
Questions, anyone? Discussion? Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
We'll go to voting. Erica?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Approved. Thank you very much. Next.
Thank you. So the next contract is also with Schoharie County. This is also a round 3 project. This is a project that had its cover cropping with some educational outreach built into it, but due to COVID, the farm was closed to the public, so they'd like a time extension to be able to fulfill that outreach obligation. They have proceeded with planting as planned, so this 1-year extension will just allow them to really do some outreach and education on their farm about cover cropping and soil health. So this will be extended till 12/31/2022.
Questions, anyone? Discussion? Have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Second, we'll go to voting. Erica?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Approved. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So those are the only 2 amendments I had, and that was the update for CRF unless there are any questions.
Hearing no questions, I'll kind of jump into a quick Climate Action Council update. The Climate Action Council continues to meet at least monthly. And at the September meeting, there was a presentation from the Climate Justice Working Group with their comments and evaluation of both the land use and local government and the Ag and Forestry Advisory Panel recommendations. We certainly learned a lot from that group, the Climate Justice Working Group. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for further education, both in environmental justice issues as well as issues and challenges faced by farmers in New York State. You know, they gave us an open critique, an honest critique, and, you know, we took lots of notes and are hoping to engage with members of that working group in the future for further dialogue and discussion. We also heard from NYSERDA and their head researcher, modeler, Carl Moss, who is responsible for leading a team to take all of our recommendations and our current programs and initiatives and modeling out the greenhouse gas reduction potential with those initiatives and recommendations, as well as the sequestration potential moving forward for both the 2030 and 2050 target years. The integration analysis, as it's called, is they're integrating all the recommendation and running this analysis is showing that although we will experience, if we implement as planned, dramatic cuts both in 2030, by 2030 and 2050, it falls short of the intended targets in the law. So the Climate Action Council is discussing, and you know, various agencies that were in charge of coordinating the work of the panels, where we can get the additional emission reductions and sequestration capacity. So asserting extra ambition within our intended recommendations, as well as focusing, you know, on research and development of approaches that we are just not aware of today that could be scalable for use into the future. So these meetings are certainly both informative, heavy in policy and discussions, and you know, I would encourage folks to pay attention to when these meetings are held and to listen to the recordings if you have time, or view the actual PowerPoints in the presentations, all on the Climate Action Council's website, and I'll have a link to that in the meeting minutes for today. So I just wanted to give the group a brief update where we are with the Climate Action Council. Staff remain busy, all of the agencies involved, and in our case, interagency between DEC and Ag and Markets, in drafting of our particular chapters of the scoping plan. So taking those recommendations, putting them more into a format, narrative form, and developing each particular chapter that then will be integrated by NYSERDA and the editing teams into one document. So we have lots of meetings with the executive director of the Climate Action Council and staff to make sure that as we're drafting, we're as close to the desired format as possible. And the intention here is the Climate Action Council will have a merged draft to review and discuss at their upcoming meetings this fall toward a public release of this draft document in January. So we are still on track to accomplish that goal. So, our responsibility is the Agriculture and Forestry chapter, as well as parts of the land use, local government. And it's definitely taken up a lot of our time, but time well spent, and looking forward to the release of the draft. And that is it. That's all I have for an update, unless there are any questions or comments.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Ag non-point. Bethany.
Okay, thank you, everybody. So I will just start with a brief program status report. We do have a dashboard for everyone's enjoyment today. Special thanks to Abigail for taking a deep dive into our database to play around with it and put this dashboard together for everyone. To date, we have completed approximately 29 closeouts. Up until this month, we have not had any amendment requests come in so far, but as you'll see in a few minutes, that will change. For our round 26 contracts, at this time, approximately 33 of those have been fully executed, and 13 contracts are pending. Since we were able to put together this dashboard, 2 of those contracts were executed, so that's why the numbers are slightly off here. And in total, our program is currently managing approximately 178 contracts for an approximate total of just over $64 million. I also want to give the committee a brief update on where we are at with round 27 of the Ag Non-Point Source program. As everyone is aware, that round of funding closed earlier this summer, and scoring of the proposals has been completed. Unfortunately, we were unable to hold a post-review meeting to discuss those scores before this month's state committee meeting. So we are still on track to have that post-review meeting on October 4th, and we will be bringing a ranked list to the state committee for approval for our October meeting. So stay tuned next month to see that round 27 list. Any questions on program status before we get into the updates or amendments? Hearing none, we'll shift over to the Ag Non-Point Source amendments that will require approval, state committee approval. We do have 10 time extension amendments that were submitted for this month. So what I plan to do is introduce the amendments. I do not plan to really read line by line the reason for the extension request. But if there's any questions, feel free to ask them. Also, if there is any district on the line that would like to add some additional information, for the state committee, feel free to do so at that time as well. So our first amendment comes to us from Monroe County Soil and Water Conservation District for a Round 21 project. They are looking to extend the project for 1 year from their current end date is December 31st of this year, and they would like to extend it out to December 31st of 2022. This would be the contract's third time extension if it is approved. The project has experienced severe delays caused by the local and state permitting process. And in order to get certain permits, the farm has had to complete an extensive study pertaining to floodplains. I believe the district has let us know that the permit has finally come in and the farm is still committed to completing the project. Unfortunately, at this point, there is no way that the project could be completed before the end of the year. So they are looking to extend it and see the project through to completion. And this amendment is supported by Victor DiGiacomo, a Region 1 AEA, but referred to the state committee.
Questions, comments, anyone? Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
We'll go to voting. Erica?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Approved. Thank you. Next.
All right. Our next time extension comes from Cayuga County for a Round 21 project. The current end date is December 31st of this year, and they are looking to extend it to September 27th of 2022. And this also would be this contract's third time extension. The farm involved in this project has proposed to implement 2 waste storage and cover and flare systems, and unfortunately has experienced multiple issues that have caused delays in the project, from financial hardship to a barn fire and then the COVID-19 pandemic. The farm has already invested a significant amount of funds into the project to complete some necessary work, preliminary work, and the farm is still committed to completing the project, but would need that additional construction season to get everything done. This extension is supported by PJ Emmerich, Region 2 AEA, and referred to the state committee. And I do believe that some representatives from the district are on the line. So if anyone wants to add any further information, please feel free to do so.
Brian Hall here. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Bethany, for the quick summary, and also PJ. We've all been working on this this project for many years now, and I appreciate all your support to get through this. I can add any details that you would need down to the penny. You know, it's been a very complicated project, but everything is bid out, contracted, was ready to go this spring, and then materials were, I'm not French, but force majeure or something along those lines. So things went on hold. We were close this fall, but prices were still really high, and it was a joint effort between the contractor, the farm, and us to say, if we can, we'll do it in the spring, and hopefully we'll have, you know, a reasonable price. All of us are over budget, but everybody's been coordinating and working together to get this project done, and definitely an intense commitment to do it. We all have so much invested, and I would definitely appreciate an approval for this extension. That's it. Thank you.
I believe we're we're going beyond our normal extension lines, but times. But we're in an odd situation with COVID and everything that's happened, that I don't think timelines historically have been in place are important at this time. Projects are worthy. We should be moving them forward. Any further discussion, questions on this one? Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Go to voting. Erica.
Yes.
Erica.
Yes.
Dave.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Approved. Next. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So our next one comes from Onondaga County for a round 22 project that currently ends in December 31st of 2021. They are also looking to extend it for a year for a new end date of December 31st, 2022. Their reason for the request is highlighted here on the page. If there are any questions, feel free to ask, but this time extension has been reviewed and is supported by PJ Emmerich, Region 2 AEA, and referred to the state committee. They have this contract has also received a previous time extension as well.
Dale,
I'm
I think
sorry.
you're muted.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I forgot to hit the button. Questions, comments, anyone?
Good morning, and thank you for having me. This is Aaron with Onondaga County. Just to let everybody know, since we've submitted this request, we are in the process of trying to get a contractor lined up for the project if this extension is approved, and we're currently in a waiting period for approval from a phase 1 report that needs to be completed by NRCS. So we have been working closely with our NRCS partners and the landowner and private engineer to move the project forward. And everybody wants to keep this thing going. It's just been a matter of getting through some of the lining up timeframes, since it is a project that has equip funding. So thank you.
Have a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Vote.
Second.
Thank you. Erica.
Yes.
Dave.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Approved. Thank you. Next.
All right, the next one is from Onondaga County as well for a round 24 project that is currently set to end in March 1st of, that's supposed to say 2022. They're looking to extend it for a year to March 1st of 2023. The reason for their request is cited here. And this extension has been reviewed and is supported by PJ Emmerich, Region 2 AEA, and referred to the state committee.
Questions, comments, anyone? Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
We'll go to voting. Erica?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Approved. Thank you. Next.
Okay, next one is also from Onondaga County for a round 24 project that is set to end on March 31st of 2022. They're looking to extend it for 1 year for a new end date of March 1st, 2023. The reason for the request is shown here on the screen. This extension has been reviewed and is supported by PJ Emmerich and is referred to the state committee.
Questions, comments, anyone? Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
We'll go to voting. Erica?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Approved. Thank you.
Okay, next one is from Ontario County Soil and Water for a round 23 project that is set to expire at the end of this year. They are looking to for a 6-month extension to June 30th of 2022. The reason for their request is cited here on the page. This extension has been reviewed and is supported by PJ Emmerich and referred to the state committee, and this contract has received one-time extension previously.
Questions, comments, anyone? Get a motion, please.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
We'll go to voting. Erica?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Approved. Thank you. Next.
All right, next one is also from Ontario County Soil and Water for a round 24 project that is set to expire on March 1st of 2022. They're looking to extend it a year to March 1st of 2023. The reason for the request is cited here on the page. This has been reviewed and supported by PJ Emmerich and referred to the state committee.
Questions, comments, anyone? Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Go to voting. Erica?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Approved. Thank you. Next.
Okay, our next one is from Delaware County Soil and Water Conservation District for a round 23 project that is currently set to end on June 30th of 2022. They are looking to extend the contract by 6 months for a new end date of December 31st, 2022. The reason for their request is shown here in the summary. And this extension has been reviewed and approved by Scott Fickbaum, our Region 3 AEA, and is referred to the state committee. This contract has received one-time extension previously. And I also believe there are some representatives from Delaware County on the line. If anyone has any further questions or if you folks would like to add any more information here.
Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Larry Underwood, Director for Delaware County Soil and Water. Thank you to the committee and thank you very much to Bethany for entertaining our request and getting it to the committee for today's meeting and review. Yeah, we just to put it into perspective for this second extension for us for round 23, things have been going really well up until really just this season, late summer. We've completed 40 out of 46 BMPs in our round 23 grant, and that equates to 6 out of 7 systems complete. The ones that we're still working on and hope to get across the finish line possibly yet this fall, but unlikely. But we certainly will next spring or early summer, and largely due to stream permitting delays and challenges and issues that we've had, especially this year. And that's another discussion, by the way, that I started with Scott Fickbaum at some of the other soil and water districts in the state. And I'm hoping to include Brian Steinmuller in the near future on some of those conversations about that. But to get back to the request, stream permitting, we're working on getting the permits right now. We're pretty sure we're going to have them, but as you know, our stream work window, permit window, expires at the end of this month, and it doesn't allow us to get back into the streams until June 15th of each construction season. And as Bethany said, our grant expires June 30th of 2022. So we didn't want to roll the dice and gamble on that and try to get that in under the, the last minute. So thank you again for entertaining the request. And I think we all appreciate what you said a few minutes ago, Dale, that we are experiencing strange and unfamiliar times. You know, the pandemic has affected all of us and our efficiencies and abilities, and maybe more so with some of our partnering agencies with the permitting stuff. I think is part of that, those delays. But yeah, we're gonna get these things done for sure, and we always appreciate the support from the state committee. So thank you.
Good. Any more additions or questions or comments? Motion, please. Second.
Second.
Voting. Erica.
Yes.
Dave.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Approved. Thank you. One more, do we?
Thank you.
Okay. Couple more.
Couple more.
Can I just ask one question while Stephanie scrolls? Is anybody else hearing what sounds like a squeaky hamster wheel, or is it just us here in Albany?
I hear it too.
Okay.
I hear it.
You too.
Yep.
We are working on it. I'm not sure exactly where it's coming from. I'll just remind everybody, if they're not talking, to please keep phones on mute, but it might be our system here, so we're trying to troubleshoot that.
Sorry, everybody.
Brand new system.
Okay, so our next amendment is from Schoharie County Soil and Water Conservation District for a Round 24 project that is set to end on March 1st of 2022. They are actually looking to extend it out to December 31st of 2024. The reason for their request is cited here on the summary page. This extension has been reviewed and is supported by Scott Fickbaum, Region 3 AEA, but is referred to the state committee.
Questions, comments, anyone? Motion, please.
Second motion. Okay. Move. So move. Sorry about that, Dale.
Okay, give me a second again, somebody.
Second.
Thank you. Voting, Erica?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Approved. Thank you.
Okay, and I believe this is our last amendment. So this was submitted by Lewis County Soil and Water for a Round 24 project that will expire on March 1st of 2022. They would like to request a one-year time extension to March 1st of 2023 for the reasons cited here on the page. Their request was reviewed and is supported by Ryan Cunningham, our Region 4 AEA, and referred to the state committee.
Questions, comments, anyone? Motion, please.
So moved.
So moved.
I'll take Scott as a second then.
Sure.
Okay, we'll go to voting. Erica?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Approved. Thank you. The last one.
That was the last one. So thank you all for sticking with me through all of those. And that concludes my Ag Non-Point Source report, unless there are any further questions regarding program status or Round 27.
Thanks, Bethany.
Very good.
Brian, you want to introduce our next session?
Sure, thank you. This is in addition to the agenda as we sent it out last week. I had a chance to speak with Blake Glover, USDA NRCS State Conservationist, about a new USDA coronavirus agricultural relief payments program, if you will. And I asked Blake to come and have a discussion with the committee about it today, and raise the awareness on the program and attempt to answer any questions that we might have. So with that, I'll turn it over to Blake. Blake, I think we have your presentation, so we can advance your slides for you if you'd like.
Thank you, sir.
Yep, absolutely. Coming up.
Oh, hang on.
Maybe. If you don't have them, I can share on my
No,
end.
it's just user error.
All right. Okay, guys. Thank you to the committee for allowing me a little bit of time here to discuss the USDA and RCS Coronavirus Agricultural Relief Payment, or another acronym to throw at you, CARP report. Next slide. So USDA under the previous administration and even with the new administration have been looking at ways to provide relief to farmers across the country that have been targeted by the coronavirus and some of the business detrimental business opportunities that they've had. So FSA has started that process at the beginning of the coronavirus with some of their relief packages. NRCS, this is our first relief type of payment that we have provided under the coronavirus relief program. And so NRCS is targeting those prices that have gone up for commodities. Please mute your line. Get some feedback. Some prices that have gone up for commodities such as lumber, steel, PVC, and concrete, gravel, rock, you name it. For this program to be eligible, it is for contracts that we have from 2015 up until 2021. And so that's new contracts that we just obligated this year are eligible. And then this program is only eligible through December 31st of this year. So any practices installed from 2015 up until today, and also from today up until December 31st are eligible if installed and checked out per our design specifications, and we pay for. The extra relief payment will be tacked on to the regular payment for the practice. Next slide. And so from the directive that we received nationally, there are two separate lists of practices. I want to just make sure we all understood what New York is eligible. So on the right-hand side, the X-out portion, those 18 practices, there were states around the country that do not receive a fair amount of budget. And so they reduced the amount of percent that were paid for a practice. And so they went underneath 75%. Some are paying 50% for equipped practice installed. Some are paying 65%. But the max that is allowable underneath the Farm Bill is 75% for producers, and then 90%, up to 90% for historically underserved, beginning farmers and ranchers, veteran producers, socially disadvantaged can get up to 90%. On the left-hand side, let me back up. Because New York, we have set our rates at 75% or 90%. We do not qualify for the right-hand side practices, but we do qualify for the left-hand side practices, the 7 practices on the left. And those are the 7 that we're going back to 2015 that practices already installed, paid for. We're going back and modifying contracts and making these relief payments to the producers moving forward. Until December 31st of this year, we will be making relief payments unless something changes. So those are 7: roof and cover, irrigation pipeline, irrigation system, surface and subsurface, lined waterway or outlet, livestock pipeline, trails and walkways, and channel bed stabilization. Those are the 7 practices that we will move forward here in New York for relief payments to producers that have installed one of these practices. Next slide. So some relief payment examples. So as you can see there, these are the same kind of 7 that I just went over. On the far right hand side, the CARP percent payment. So we may have paid X amount of dollars for a roof and cover. We will now go back and pay a big percent over that to cover for timber and any kind of lumber that we thought that was eligible for that. So if we made a payment for a practice, we're going to pay additional relief payment of 133% of that practice that we just installed and paid for. And it just goes down the list as the percents of what we're going to pay for moving forward on some of those practices. And these are set throughout the country. So New York didn't set these percents. These are percents throughout the country. Next slide. And just to bring it back home here, this is how it shows up after we modify a contract that we have with a producer. Once again, once we modify the system, we input those percents. The system understands what we paid for originally, along with adjusting for the relief payment that we will give to the producer moving forward. And once again, the basis for these modifications or revisions, this is the additional payment reflected in the 2021 coronavirus relief payments. It mitigates some of those increased costs because of the pandemic. So we are excited about this, although it's a major workload for us to go back and some of these contracts are still active and modify, and then also make another payment that we weren't expecting to do, but it does address some of our shortcomings on some of our practices and payment costs that we're a little bit under on right now. So we're excited about getting these funds out to producers. I do understand, in talking with Brian a little bit, there's some concerns from the districts with partnering on some of these projects and some of the percents that may go over that 100%. I think Brian has some thoughts on that, but I just wanted to share with the committee on where NRCS is going, where the agency is going on relief payments right now. Like I said, this is our first time moving forward with any kind of relief payment, and FSA has done this in the past. So with that, Brian and committee, I guess we'll open up for discussion or questions.
Blake, this is Bethany. I have a quick question, and I will apologize if you already touched on it in your presentation and I missed it, but are these payments being made like retroactively for projects that were already completed, or are they being made when like a local NRCS office is requesting, payment for a newly completed project?
So the quick answer is both. So the practice could have been completed in 2015 or 2016, and we have gone back and kind of looked at those 7 practices that we have in the system. I think we're right around 18 contracts total that would qualify at this time retroactively, but there are between now and December 31st, obviously there's going to be more that will qualify that have not been installed yet, but would qualify for the relief payment.
Okay, thank you.
Blake, this is Lindsay Gerstenslager from Wayne County Soil and Water. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Yourself?
We're doing all right. We're actually struggling right now because we have a couple of NRCS joint projects that we're doing with some state funding that we're looking at. They're about a third more. And just wondering, and they're not going to likely get installed till 2022. Is there anything on the horizon or discussion being made about having a secondary CARP program to reflect the continuation of high prices?
No, not at this time. There has been no discussion about continuing this beyond December 31st. But I think that's always up for discussion as time goes on and then the pandemic goes on as well. But there's been no discussion beyond December 31st.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, Blake, thank you very much. And just to let everybody know as well, Blake reached out to me last week, and we had a discussion about this, subsequent discussion as well, with counsel's office here at the department, and trying to figure out the nature of these payments and how they would be considered to be landowner match for our state programs, or how the cost share implications for our state programs would view these payments. So, I think those discussions are ongoing with our counsel's office, but intending to get some guidance out to districts who might also be making payments on these projects, and whether or not state payments need to reflect the additional coronavirus ag relief payment here from EQIP. So stay tuned for that, and we'll continue those discussions. And Blake, as more information becomes available, I just want to thank you for sharing what you have already, and we'll get that information out to districts. I don't know how many contracts that might be impacted by this, but we'll do everything we can to address it.
Yeah, if we get down the road here and the state decides that the district needs to make some adjustments, we are willing to share information on any of these payments that we're making to allow the districts to make adjustments if needed.
And just to be clear as well, and I might have missed it in the bottom of your presentation, but these are formula-driven payments. These are not looking at farm by farm or specific expenditures by those farms, correct?
You were breaking up right at the end. Can you say it one more time?
Sure. I'm sorry, Blake. Just to reiterate, if I missed it, I apologize. But these payments are being made on more of a formula. I think, yes, you had that chart up there that talked about the percentage of payment based on particular projects. Just wanted to verify that you're not looking at the expenditures on each of those farm projects, bills, invoices, and actual costs. It's based on a formula, correct?
Yeah, that is correct. It's percent given through calculator per practice. I think lumber is the higher percentage out of all those, and followed by PVC and there you go, PVC and maybe some concrete or gravel situations there. So yes, so those percentages it's driven by percentages, not by looking back at any kind of data or receipts that we may have.
Thank you, Blake. Amanda has a question in the chat. How will RCPP be handled?
So RCPP will be handled a little bit differently. We have the option of, if there was through RCPP, if there was a identified partner match in that, we need to look at each individual RCPP individually to make those decisions on if we're going to allow for CARP payments to be at the percent that they are. And Emily Armstrong will be reaching out to a lot of the folks that are dealing with RCPP to they understand where we're headed on that moving forward.
Blake, this is Dustin Lewis.
Hi, Dustin.
Hey, I was just wondering, are you going to be reaching out to the districts that have farms that have contracts that are going to be involved in CARP, or are you going to be handling it strictly through NRCS? I know there's, like Lindsay said, there's going to be some projects that are matched up with district projects that will be involved. So I just wanted to make sure that the districts that are involved are aware of what's going on.
Well, we have no mechanism to understand, from a state level, what districts are involved. So I would point you back to, to have those local conversations with your district conservationists or local field staff. If you as a district know and understand that you've partnered on something with NRCS, to have that conversation with the local staff. We don't keep those kind of records when a partner partners with us on an EQIP contract, but we do on, say, Rcpp and some other things that require partnership match.
Yep, I understand. I just know there's a lot of districts that are not on the call today that are not going to be aware that this is even happening and might not know to ask. That was my question, because they're just not involved in this call today.
Yeah, so after this call, we will make sure that through Ag and Markets that NRCS gets something out to all districts, and then I'll be on employee association call this week as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Blake. Yeah, Dustin, we want to have this conversation today. Is a lot of this information was just becoming available late last week, and then that would be our intention to get the word out to all districts through our email listserv.
Thank you, Blake. Anyone else have questions or comments? If not, I'll move to reports, and I'll start with the voting members. Erica?
Sure, thanks, Dale. Just a couple updates of activities that happened this summer. We were grateful to do some outreach and programs in person, and a lot of partners, whether districts or NRCS or Cornell and folks on the line, were definitely part of these activities. So both really happening in the Genesee River watershed and some of the work happening out there. August 31st, we had a soil health field day at Mulligan Farm. I'll drop in the link here. Mulligan Farm had the latest or most recent soil health case study, and there was discussion about that. There was some demonstration around different soil health practices, and I think there were about 80 people between farmers and technical service providers and others who attended that. So that happened August 31st, and then was happy to see some familiar faces August 9th at Table Rock Farm. AFT had organized that day in Perry a learning circle for women landowners and farmers, and had conversations around conservation planning, in addition to being able to see a photo exhibit at the Wyoming Arts Council that was all photography and stories around women landowners and farmers who were practicing conservation. And so we had, I think, about 15 to 20 women who were part of that program, and then we all shuttled over to Table Rock Farm, which I'm sure you've all heard, and we shared the announcement, was the AEM Leopold Conservation Award winner. So really great celebration for Megan. I think it was a really great connection to those women farmers and landowners who were thinking about conservation, to see kind of leadership that she and her family have taken, and just a really great presentation by Al and Commissioner Ball, and Megan there as well, and our partners at the San Juan County Foundation. So we are going to do another Women's Learning Circle sometime in October. Topic is around forest and forest planning, so very applicable to our presentation today. And I think we might do that virtually or in person. I haven't quite decided yet. And those are all the updates I have.
Thank you. Dave, you got anything?
I haven't really got anything, no. State Grange is coming up next month in October, and I'm not going to be able to make it here because it's a 5-day session.
Okay.
It's the
Ah,
19th. Pardon?
Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Scott, you have anything?
Yeah, first off, our monthly NYCD meeting will be on Thursday, the 23rd, instead of Wednesday at 7 o'clock via Zoom. If you have any questions, hold Blanche or check the nyacd.org website. And our annual meeting is still going on at in Casanova on the third week of October.
Thank you. Brian, turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Dale. I will go down through our list of advisory members first, and then I will just ask staff if they have anything to report, and then we'll also ask conservation districts or other partners if they have anything. But first, I will go through advisory member agencies. Ag and Markets, Tim, anything to report?
Hi, Brian. Nothing to report. Thanks.
Thank you. CDEA, Dustin?
Hi, Brian. Thank you. I wanted to let everybody know the skills workshop, the registrations are finally closed for that. We have almost 100 folks attending this year in person at Cortland. It's going to be next week. Water Quality Symposium, Caitlin's been working hard on trying to prepare for that. We're in the process of making our final determination on whether or not we will be holding an in-person or virtual event again this year. I know everybody's worried about a surge in cases over the winter. And our next meeting is tomorrow at Old McDonald Farm in Sackett's Harbor. And we're going to be holding our meetings on the fourth Wednesday of the odd months. So just so people can schedule. I know in the past we've had varying meeting days and times, and it's been a little difficult sometimes for everybody to get scheduled properly. So the fourth Wednesday of the first, third, fifth, the odd months, and November's is going to be the third Wednesday, so we don't conflict with Thanksgiving. So everybody, if you don't mind marking your calendars, but we will continue to send out the reminders about the meetings. And I think that's all.
Thank you, Dustin. Appreciate that. I also note that Caitlin and Chaz are with us as well. Caitlin, Chaz, anything to add to Dustin's report?
Hello, Brian. This is Caitlin. Can you hear me?
Hear you loud and clear.
Wonderful. Thank you. We sent out a survey that Chastity developed to collect information about holding a virtual or in-person water quality symposium. So I want to thank everyone who completed that survey. It's really helping us to make our decision of a virtual or in-person event. I've been in contact with our hotel, which is wonderful. The staff there are fantastic. And I want to thank everyone, our partners from NRCS, NYACD, and the state committee, as well as conservation districts who were on our first symposium planning committee call last week. We're having a great lineup of courses for this coming event. And again, I want to thank our volunteers, our track chairs, and all of our committee members for helping to organize these courses and getting the education out there. And again, just thanking our partners. We can't do it without you. So hold on to your hats. We're going to have a great symposium. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much. DEC.
Hi, Brian. It's Sarah. I don't have anything to report. Thank you, though.
Okay, thank you. Brian, Molly, anything to add? Okay. DOH.
Hey, Brian, this is Paul. Nothing to report on our end.
Thank you, Paul. DOS.
Hi, so I don't have a ton. We are in the middle of our CFA reviews. For some general information, we received 101 applications for just over $74 million. We only have 27.75 million, so it's going to be a really competitive year for us. we did receive a number of watershed plans and water quality related implementation projects, but because we're still in the scoring, middle of scoring, we don't really know how that's going to shake out yet. We did have an emphasis this year on implementation projects. We received you get more points for implementation projects this year, so that will likely lean water quality projects more towards the implementation than the planning this year, but we'll see.
Thank you, Kate. Appreciate that. That's wow. 101 applications, 74 million in requests, 27 available. I don't envy the review panel in prioritizing those projects and making decisions. Thank you.
Yep.
And Morgan, I'm sorry, Kate, I think maybe in the future too, I'd love if you and Stephanie could give the state committee a more comprehensive update on the status of watershed management planning. We talked about it a number of times in the past, but specific to high priority watersheds like Owasco Lake and others that are completing 9-element plans. So when you're able to and have it have some availability, I think that would be a good addition.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely do that.
Great, thank you. Right. Might have got a note that Brian stepped away, but in case I have that wrong, Brian, Cals? Okay. Let's see, is Beth back from Cornell Cooperative Extension? Beth?
Yes, nothing additional. Yeah, I just, I don't know if it came up. I got off after the forest presentation, which was great. But at Cooperative Extension, we also have the Master Forest Owner Program. And so I'm wondering how we can connect with some of the information, the regulations and the tax credits that they were talking about, especially getting the information out to those folks. So when they talk to people, and I think that's what we see too, very few of the forests are actually managed in any way. They just don't, the owners don't know. If they haven't had an interest in that before, they don't understand or know that the forest has to be managed. I'll put that in quotes. So there's a lot of educational opportunity there for sure.
Thank you. Agreed. Okay. Blake, anything else to add?
No, not at this time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Steve, ESF?
Hi, Brian. No, I don't have any updates today. Thanks.
Thank you. Am I missing any advisory members? Okay, at this time, I'll ask staff if they have any reports to the state committee. Go ahead and take your phone off mute.
I would like to let everyone know that our annual report for 2020 has been released. We sent an email out to partners. It's in a PDF format. Please feel free to share that and take a look at it. We have had a lot of accomplishments over the past year, even though there's been a lot of obstacles. So it's still a very positive and uplifting report.
Agreed completely. Thank you very much, Jennifer, again, for all your work in developing articles, working with staff to develop articles, coordinating the formatting and final product. And just so everybody knows, these reports do go through an extensive review process, both here within the agency and downtown. So it's just wonderful to be able to get these reports out, even if it's a little later than we would have liked, but really wonderful, great information, very uplifting stories in there.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim, I see that you have joined us here on the video and you're going to give us an engineering update.
Yeah, well, first I just wanted to thank all the districts that took the time to fill out the engineering needs survey that went out a few months ago. We had an engineering subcommittee meeting to review those survey results, and there was a lot of good information, little nuggets of wisdom in there. we didn't come up with any silver bullets to solve all the problems. That wasn't really the expectation, but it was really great to just gather input from as many districts as possible about their engineering needs and how they see those needs being met in the future. The committee or the subcommittee met, and we did come up with some smaller tasks that we can do to keep things going along. I think we're going to work with NRCS to develop a SUNY ESF capstone project, maybe for next year. That would be for a little more awareness of our industry, at least at ESF. And we're also going to look into maybe offering more PDHs for professional engineers, from engineers that are in their industry, either myself or NRCS engineers. And lastly, the subcommittee members are going to look to kind of nudge colleges, universities in our areas more in the direction of soil and water and agricultural engineering. I want to remind you that we did have a couple successes, I guess, from earlier in the year. We completed a engineering consultants directory that's now on SharePoint. So if anybody needs that, also I can send that out to you. That's about all I've got. Any engineering related questions? Okay, thanks again.
Thank you, Tim. Great report. Okay. Any other staff reports?
This is Bethany. I'll just share that we have scheduled our next meeting of the Technical Advisory Committee, and that is going to be held on October 27th. We are still working on agenda topics and getting all that information out there, but just as a save the date, we plan to have that meeting on October 27th.
Can we dress in costume?
If you want to, sure.
All right. Thank you, Bethany. Any other staff reports? Erica, thank you so much for organizing those excellent events, and it was great to see you and all in your company at Table Rock Farms. I did just want to spend another minute again letting everybody know that in August we did award our second annual AEM Leopold Conservation Award to Table Rock Farms and Castile, New York. So great event, wonderful farm, doing some wonderful things in the farm ownership and all of the staff at the farm really all on the same page, moving in the right direction toward sustainability, regeneration, farm practices, and really just doing a great job. So it was wonderful to showcase their farm, and also a lot of congratulations goes to the Wyoming County Soil and Water District as well for all of their work with this farm and other farms within that region. Really was a great event. As the commissioner said, it was a great day to be the commissioner when you had that opportunity to come out and issue the award. So it was great to see so many faces we haven't seen in a while. And if you haven't seen it already, there's really nice publications put together by the Leopold Foundation. I know you can't see it; it's too far away, but I will make sure we link the material and the video here in the minutes for everybody to check out if you haven't already. Okay, at this time, I'd like to invite any conservation district joining us today, any conservation partner or member of the public to go ahead and take their phone off mute and address the committee, ask questions, however you'd like. Okay, Dale, I think that might have been a long enough pause for folks to find their mute button. So hearing no additional reports, back to you.
Thank you, Brian. Everyone else. Does anyone have anything that I want to bring up before we move to determine the next meeting date? So you got October 19th down, Brian. Is that good for everybody?
No, I can't be there. State Grange is the meeting, Dale. It's a 5-day meeting, starts Friday and ends Tuesday. It'll be in Corning, so I can't get there fast enough back here.
Yep.
Yeah, just started with the third Tuesday just to try to be consistent and get everybody's, on the same schedule, but understood.
Do you want to see if you, Erica, Scott, what do you think of the 19th?
The 19th works for me. I can be flexible another Tuesday though, if that's helpful.
Scott?
Yeah, I should be able to make it. Be heading out to Casanova for NYSD annual meeting that afternoon, but I'm not far from Casanova.
We'll have a quorum, Brian. You want to just shoot for the 19th anyway?
If that's okay with Dave, I'm sorry to, if exclude you. If it works out where we have a quorum, I'd like to try to keep it to the third Tuesday, if
It wouldn't
possible.
work out for me. I just don't want to see you be short, that's all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I can't do the week
go ahead.
before, so.
Okay. And I'll contact Aaron and see what his schedule looks like. Oftentimes this time of year, though, he can't completely commit until it's closer to the date. But right now, we do have a quorum scheduled, so let's keep that October 19th date. And if we need to change it, we'll get a notice out to everybody.
Okay. That'd be good. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for participating today, and the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks, Casey.